on the road again.
On the road again.
Seriously, no audio still, Chris.
No, there's going to be audio in a second.
Okay.
Trust me.
I can't wait to get
Remember,
on the road.
they are a little bit behind us, so keep going.
Yeah. No, I'll just keep singing. I don't know any more words to that song. Can't sing.
You're going to make me start the show over.
I feel like you should because
we have audio.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I told you there's audio coming. Now that everybody who's listening to this as a podcast has heard us argue about that, I actually have to edit the fucking show. Okay, moving on. What's going on, man?
I'm home for a few days before I leave to go on Thanksgiving vacation.
Dude, I'm so ready to fight now.
About the Star Trek thing?
Yeah.
Why? Are you itching to be wrong?
No, I'm not itching to be wrong. I'm itching to tell you that just because you have a personal preference, that doesn't mean that what you think is right is actually right.
Except in this case, I'm right.
Except you're not, because
no.
It's okay to change an aesthetic over the course of time. Things evolve and differ. And I still will make the argument that Star Trek, if they had the budget in the 60s and into the 70s, would have done exactly what they're doing right now in the movies, because it was supposed to be, as Bob said, the wagon train to the stars. So the Wild West in space.
Okay, I'm just going to say this, and then I'm done with this. I'm done with this conversation. There is in no universe where Gene Roddenberry is sitting there over his typewriter with his cigarette going, you know what? If we could only afford motorcycle jumps, I think this episode would be so much better. There's no possible way that had ever crossed his mind.
Here, let me tell you this. If Gene Roddenberry was writing stuff today, he would be out of work and wouldn't have a job if he had just started.
No, bullshit.
Yep. That's what I'm saying.
I call
right
bullshit.
there. Because there's just much better stuff being written these days. Maybe some of that's on the back of the stuff that he laid down. But
On the
sure.
back? Are you saying that? Oh my God, my head actually hurts from. He is like one of the cornerstones of sci-fi TV writing. Like, do you think there's a Firefly without the original Star Trek?
Or do you think that somebody else would have slipped in and done that same thing at some point anyway? But that was in the 60s.
Well, all right. So now you've got monkeys. You got monkeys on typewriters. Like literally, like probability says somebody will write something, no matter what. I'm just saying that. Look, the J.J. Abrams movies are fine, minus like 10,000 lens flares.
Sure. I mean, lens flares are way too much.
Minus the lens flares.
But man, this
But
hate...
they're not good Star Trek movies. Good Star Trek movies are about using science and diplomacy for solving problems. The best of the original series episodes were like that. The best of the next gen episodes were like that. The best of DS9. The essence of Star Trek is science, diplomacy, logic, stuff like that. Not motorcycle jumps.
I think that's the essence of what actually occurred in Next Gen. I think they would have added a lot more of that stuff, and Deep Space Nine. I think they would have added a lot more of the stuff that you're talking about into that show in the 60s and 70s if they could have, but they didn't have the ability to do so. I mean, they had
like that's right.
They had action sequences and things like that when they could pull them off. They just didn't do them very well because they didn't have the money or the stunt people to do it.
Listen, I'll cop to the fact that they didn't pull off action sequences correctly, but I'm just saying, like, there is much about that new Star Trek series that is far more about let's blow shit up than it is about let's solve problems.
Yeah, man, I didn't like the first two so much for that reason.
Well, I mean, that's a preference thing. I'm just saying, if you look at the aesthetic of Star Trek all the way through, from the old series all the way through Voyager, not that heap of crap Enterprise thing, but if you just look at those four series as a body
I'm talking about the first two movies of the new series.
I'm talking about the actual Star
Trek. Yeah, I know.
But
like the thing that you're talking about, the ideology that you're talking about was present in that third movie.
It was far more present in that movie than it was in the previous two combined.
Yes.
It's the least bad of the two.
Look, man, I think that Justin Lin took action movie stuff and put it with that Star Trek aesthetic that you're talking about. Logic and problem solving and at times diplomacy to make that stuff work out.
And a kick-ass Beastie Boys soundtrack.
Well, sure, why not? But like it was there. Like
blame that on J.J. Abrams because he put it in the first movie.
Okay. Yeah, he did. They reused it, right?
Yes.
That's the
J.J. Abrams put it in the first movie. Justin Lin reused it because it fit with Kirk.
So it's just
because
Kirk's,
it was a thing from his
Kirk's
youth
theme song.
But I will say one more thing on the Star Trek argument, and then we will do a show because the fans want a show.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe they're getting a show right now.
Yeah.
Like
that, the action movie elements far overshadowed all the other elements of that movie. It was essentially an action movie in space, which those elements were more prevalent than anything else. So yes, those other elements, the Star Trek-y elements that people wanted were there. They weren't there in sufficient quantity, in my opinion, and they were overshadowed by the action because it was too fast, too furious, too Trekky. Not too Trekky.
I will say that the implementation of the problem solving, the intelligent problem solving, had an action skin on top of it.
Sure, but did it need an action skin on top of it? These are the things. These debates could go on forever.
Sure,
and
there
one
you
day
go.
We'll
That's
do a
all
Star
I'm
Trek
saying.
show.
Oh, okay, fine. Moving on. Moving on.
Welcome to the Misdirected Mark podcast.
Do you want to do the actual part where we actually talk about what's going on?
No, I think we should just go to the workshop. Talk about playtesting.
We did a bunch of shit.
What's going on is we're arguing about Star Trek.
That's right. We did a bunch of shit. We'll talk about in the after show.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later.
All right.
All right, here we go. We're going to the workshop. We'll be right back after this. I hope that's like the best what's going on ever.
We should just fight every episode.
Oh man, turn on the buzzsaw. Cut it down. Burn it down. All I'm saying, burn it down.
Fire.
Welcome to the workshop, where we try to build better games.
Yes, where we try to build better games. So we're talking about playtesting this week because that is what we decided to talk about. It's really what Phil decided to talk about. And I was like, that sounds like a good idea. Let's talk about that.
I think it largely had to do with the fact that it was like Friday or Saturday and there were no show notes. It was Saturday and it was like, there's no show notes. I better go write something.
Yeah, it helps. It really does.
Well, I had been away and you guys,
been busy.
did whatever.
Yeah.
You guys did whatever last week.
Chris was busy. I was
did
falling
whatever
asleep.
last week. I did whatever. That
right.
was fine.
Well, I felt like the people might want a Phil episode again. So
Yeah,
I came
sure.
in
So you're the black, I'm the blue. Feel free to start.
see, no one's gonna get that. He's referring to the show notes. They're color coded.
Yes,
so
they are color coded.
So behind the scenes,
if you're a
behind the
patron-
scenes, misdirected Mark. Yeah, if you're a patron,
If you're
you
a
could
patron,
actually see
you'll
this.
see them.
Right.
$5 or more.
So when we have enough time, I write the copy and then Chris color codes it so that we go back and forth so we sound natural instead of awkward and strange.
We try.
We are professional.
We are professional.
Professional.
So continue with playtesting.
Yeah. Anyway, this topic came up a few weeks ago because I found it on the pin list, and so I didn't actually come up with this on our own, and I thought it was relevant because we've actually been doing a lot of playtesting.
We have been doing a lot of playtesting.
You two have been playtesting Core Crisis, and with the Catacon just 2 weeks ago, I got to playtest the latest sprint of Hydra Hackers.
Yes.
So playtesting is kind of on our minds.
It is, in fact. And tonight we're going to talk about playtesting both from that board game perspective and the RPG perspective. In fact, just like how we playtest these things. So, my friend Phil, as we always do, let's kick this off with a definition.
Yeah, playtest, okay, is the process by which a game designer tests a new game for bugs and design flaws before bringing it to market. That's the Wikipedia definition. I thought that was actually solid enough that it didn't need any other embellishment.
I agree. I think it's pretty great.
So playtesting happens. Playtesting happens all the time. So this is a thing that game designers do all the time. It's not something that everyone often sees.
Of course.
But there are occasions where there are really large-scale playtests.
In fact, one of those was the 5th edition D&D playtest, the D&D Next playtest that went on for a couple of years.
Yeah, like that was a big deal.
Thousands of people played that game.
Yeah, which is great if you're WotC and can get that kind of
response.
Yes.
Yeah, and people were more than willing to jump in. I even did a bunch of it at PAX East and in my home games.
And they follow that up with the online surveys.
Yes, they do, and that's how they've been getting their feedback. And they continued that with their Unearthed Arcana articles because they send out these articles that are playtest documents, and people play with them, and then they fill out surveys. That's how they do that, their rotation.
The most interesting thing to me about that process was the huge risk it was as well, because here you've got a bunch of people who are all your huge fans of D&D. You split them down the middle, roughly. Half of them were like, hey, 4th edition is awesome. This is a great, game. This is the best thing ever. And then the other half were like, too board gamey. No. We want more old school, blah, blah, blah. And they went 2 years of development with no new products.
That's true.
So they weren't bringing in revenues from new products.
That's true.
For 2 years.
I'm going to say a thing right now. I can't say where I got this information from, and it's really just sort of an educated guess on my part.
Uh-oh.
But but the D&D license itself, it makes somewhere between $8 and $12 million a year, even if there's nothing coming out.
Yeah, I get it. That's
I believe that. Yeah,
So
I believe that.
I mean, it was actually cheaper for Wizards of the Coast to do this playtest in a lot of ways, and just let the game life follow. And also, that's not true that they weren't making money, because what they did is they started releasing
Well,
their old product
yeah.
catalog
They
on
did do
drive-through,
that, yes.
print on demand.
But they weren't
Yeah.
putting out new product trying to draw people in,
It's true.
and that's a risky marketing strategy.
Oh, the playtest was a marketing strategy.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I agree with that. It was risky.
And it worked because the general consensus is that 5th edition is a much better game than what they've had before.
So let me jump in here, because before we get back on topic.
Sorry.
No. It's actually everything you're saying. And I'm going to, because Jim's agreeing with you in the chat room that this was a big risk. I'm going to say it's actually less of a risk than you think. And I'll tell you why.
I agree with that.
I'll tell you why. Because
With what you said, Phil.
Because what happened with 4th edition is that a lot of people felt like that D&D left them, because so many people went to Pathfinder, which was 3.5. By having that massive open and multi-stage playtest, it was a playtest. It was also a marketing campaign
Yep.
Yeah.
to say, we care.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's an excellent
we're listening to you, as opposed to, hey, we're just going to go make this thing
Yeah,
and do it ourselves.
And because they're Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by Hasbro, they can afford to do that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, whatever version it was going to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have made 4.5. They would have sold something.
Uh-huh.
They were really smart, because what they really were after was not the new version. They were after the Pathfinder players.
Yeah.
They were also after a new audience.
Well, they were always after new audience, but when 4th came out, that exodus from D&D to Pathfinder, that's a huge problem.
It was a huge problem.
I will argue this, and Jim can see if he agrees or not. I think the open license was a bigger risk and liability than that open playtest.
There's a whole show that we could do about
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
We're not gonna
absolutely.
look. I want to talk
So-
about that.
so-
Put a pin in that. Put a pin in that.
So playtesting.
Yeah, let's talk. Well, what's another game that that's had a big playtest?
Oh, Blades in the Dark.
Blades in the Dark did have a very big
Many
playtest.
versions.
Yeah, John Harper, his Kickstarter had a set of the rules there, and then that game went through about a dozen or so iterations since the game came out.
I actually like when a Kickstarter has rules that you can start playtesting when you back it.
I do too, but this process that Harper went through really annoyed a lot of people, including somebody that we know very very well, Brett B from Gaming
Not a
and
person
BS.
you want to annoy.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
because the game got delayed.
Oh,
because he kept iterating on the game, and it's like, if you're going to kickstart the game and you promise a release date, you should probably just finish your game and put it out.
now,
I mean, I get the whole idea that you want the game to be as good as it can be,
right.
but
Now that's where you and I have the same philosophy. Like, I don't want to run the Kickstarter for Hydro Hackers until essentially the book's done.
yeah,
Like, I just want to run the Kickstarter to buy art
and print it.
print books.
Yeah,
And I'll release a laid out with blank spaces
version of the game during the Kickstarter.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my plan. Like, my plan is to, like, finish that thing. don't get me wrong. I obviously trust John Harper to finish a game.
But that game is better for that playtest, for those iterations.
Listen, the more people you can expose a game to and collect feedback, the better your ultimate product's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that process is adding on to the time. Now, I will say this. Somebody, and I don't think it's been done yet, somebody could lean into that and make a Kickstarter that says, look, here's the core of the game, right? Back the Kickstarter, and we're going to do a massive playtest, iterative version to make this game way better and then release it.
because then you know what you're getting into.
Then you know what you're getting into.
Yeah,
Because I think John made that as a decision mid-flight.
I agree, because people started commenting on the game, and he's like, the game isn't working the way that I want it to.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
he went back and fixed it, and the game will be better for it. To that point, you and I have actually steered clear of, I think, all but one version of it.
Yes.
I've purposely stayed away from it. Like, I'm ready to run or play the final version when it comes out, but I've not been interested in any of the iterative versions.
Yeah, I'm getting better about that whole thing, because there was a time in our lives where we were like, we don't like playing games that aren't finished.
Well, because we were wanting to play them in campaign structures.
Yeah,
But now I'll just play a thing to just...
play a thing and
Yeah.
to see how it works, and actually to help out a designer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for campaign play, I want the final game.
They would be good to have.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't mind playtesting some people's games in campaign format though, like to see if they
but
work.
even then, I'm playtesting it. I'm not. There's a difference between, and I guess this is another good point. There's a difference between playtesting and playing the game.
That is true.
I do not like playing unfinished games. I don't mind playtesting unfinished games in single or arc style,
I especially
runs.
like playtesting people's games at conventions. Like I got to play Satanic Panic.
You did. I almost got to play Satanic Panic, and then Jim McClure kicked me off.
Oh.
I'm just saying. I even gave him my X card, and he kicked me off.
Yeah, I know, right? Like
I let him keep it.
it's okay. There's just two people sitting at a table that didn't realize they were supposed to be where they were.
I know.
It happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not actually totally offended. I'm just mostly offended.
So why don't we move on to talking about types of playtesting? So what are some types of
let's do that.
playtesting?
All right, so there are a number of different types of playtesting. The first one that occurs is the most informal. It's the internal playtest.
So what's that?
This is like where you design a game, and if you're encoded, you design a game and just encoded people play it. If you're a solo designer, well, then we move up to the next one. But
Yeah.
it basically just means that like it's a very tight knit group, and the person who created it is kind of the person who's making sure it's running.
Yeah, yeah. The next level above that is. Are we going to talk about the next level, or are there things you want to talk about?
Well, no, I think we should just mention what the problem is. So
Sure.
It's not a problem. Internal playtesting is a great place to start. It has one weakness, which is you are so close to the game, the design, that you can't always see its problems.
Yeah, that's a problem that we had with Relic Hunters because
Yes.
we'd all been playing it so much.
Yeah,
And it
and-
wasn't until I took a break away from it for like a month,
and came back and looked at
and
it.
then I had the same exact feedback that all the playtesters had.
Exactly. So yeah, we'll talk about some of those other
Like-
steps. So after internal, what do you do with it next?
So you take it up to friends and family. That's when you get your friends and your family to come by and play the game. We do that with our game group.
Yep.
In our multiple gamers because we have several of them.
Yep. Absolutely.
And yeah, that's a thing we do. It's a good step up. It's a good way to get the game out in front of other people. And it's really hard to judge though because a lot of times those people are too kind unless you have somebody like me that's playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, like if your dad's playing the game, like it's how sure are you're getting the best feedback.
That's right. Like unless it's like, Chris, what do you think of this game?
Yeah, I mean, we can after we get through a little of this, we could tell that actually when we get into talking about Relic Hunters, we could talk about
Yeah.
that fateful playtest. There are three playtests of that game that were pivotal for the game, and we can talk about them when we get into it.
So after friends and family, what's the next thing?
So after friends and family, then we go up to guided testing. So in guided testing, we're going to take the game out and run it for strangers, but we're going to run it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what that's what I did at Gen Con with Hydro Hackers. Although, truthfully, considering who actually showed up at all the tables, it's a little more friends and family.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Gator was in one of those games. Victor Wyatt was in one of those games. So it was but there were people I didn't know who were actually in those games as well. So at guided testing, you're teaching the game to people and you're controlling it. Like for
Yeah.
instance, McClure running at a Catacon, if he's running for strangers, he's running Satanic Panic, so it's a guided playtest.
So there's another thing about this version of playtesting. I think there's a thing that's missing in here.
Okay. Did we miss one?
It's the idea of playing with other. I mean, you talked about internal, playing it among your fellow designers. There's also taking it out to play it with other people who are also game designers or are far deeper into the hobby.
Well, I mean, it's still guided testing. If you take your game to Metatopia and you sit down at a table full of designers that you're not really friends with, all you've done is stocked your playtesters with, for a lack of a better term, better playtesters.
Well, yeah, but that's still a different feel, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're expecting a different result.
Well, and when we talk about what the feedback is from playtesting, I will caveat that if your table is like a Metatopia type table of designers, there is a different kind of feedback that you can get that's helpful,
Yeah.
as opposed to when your friends play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the actions are still the same. I think you're just arming yourself with way better playtesters.
Yeah, it's very true. And then I guess that leads to the after that caveat.
Yeah, so the thing about guided playtesting is good in that strangers are more likely to tell you some stuff about your game because they don't really have a connection to you.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that if they know that you created the game, they may still be a little nicer, but you're a little more likely, like over friends and family, to get some more candid feedback.
It's true.
But the disadvantage is you're running the game, so you're tailoring the experience.
Yeah.
Which is okay, but it's not the purest form of playtest.
That's true, because then there's blind playtesting.
Yes.
And that's when you let other people run the game without you present. So when Phil decides to be like, okay, Chris, you can go run Hydro Hackers, then we'll have some blind playtesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, because, I mean, I may have developed the game, but I didn't design it.
Right. And in order, what blind playtesting is testing is, I mean, it's testing a couple things. One, it's obviously testing the game, but it's testing the game's ability to stand on its own.
That's true. Can it be run from the rules by themselves?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can somebody, a game master, interpret what is going on in the book to present that to the player so that you can actually play the game successfully?
Mm-hmm.
Chris, real quick, can you bump the main up just a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
I guess we're a little low.
Okay, I've turned it up.
Cool.
The thing with blind playtesting is that you're depending on other people to give you results.
That's tricky because you're asking people like, hey, can you send us some info?
Yep, but one of the really good things about that is these are the things that really uncover any kind of writing issues or any kind of procedural issues with your game that you just kind of gloss over or just know the game really well that you don't see them anymore.
Absolutely. And in fact, the people who've done it really well will get video. Like
Yeah.
if you can blind test it and get like somebody to record you, like the group playing it, that's invaluable.
It really is.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, for Hydro Hackers, we need to do a blind playtest of the Hydro Hack mechanic.
Yeah, I'm going to actually record it with a video camera when I actually get a chance to run it.
Right. Like I can run that Hydro Hack and it's pretty smooth. But the real test when we get down to it is, can somebody read that rule book and then do the Hydro Hack and make it run and not sit there and be like, oh, I don't know, where do these tokens go? What is this? Like, that kind of thing. So, yeah. So blind testing is it's the best kind of testing, but it's tricky in that it's hard. It may not be the easiest one to get results from.
That's true. It's hard to collect the data.
Yeah.
So let's move on now to the next thing, which is the goals of playtesting.
Why the hell do playtesting, man? Playtesting sucks.
I don't know.
I don't. It doesn't suck. Playtesting is very necessary.
I've come to learn and love playtesting.
So I will say this. I came from a software development background. To some extent, Bob did too. I was a software tester for a number of years. And so that mindset, like I totally get that mindset. Like I kind of grew up for a number of years trying to break programs. And writing tests to break programs.
Yeah.
So like I'm comfortable with it.
So for me, the art of writing is rewriting. The art of game design is playtesting, because that is when you get to the point where you can learn what you need to rewrite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Redesign.
And then I guess the other part is, as a scientist in my youth, that's another place where you are, you pick a hypothesis, you attempt it, you collect data, you analyze, you correct.
Yeah. So when we're playtesting, what are we trying to do?
Yeah.
Like,
So first thing is, at the highest level, we just want to see if the general rules of the game work.
yeah. So we have a rule set.
And
Let's see if it plays.
Is it doing a thing, right? Like, and just in general, like, does this game play?
Yeah. Does it play?
Right.
Is it the colloquial fun? Like, does it work?
Exactly.
I mean, because it could work and be terrible.
Well, it could be off message.
It could be. Yes.
Like,
Yeah. Everything could work, and all the mechanics can mesh together and do what they're supposed to do as written on paper. And if it's not a fun experience,
Yeah, I mean, your dystopian future might turn out to be hilarious game mechanics.
Or your game could actually work, but be way too mathy.
Way too mathy. We'll talk about that.
way too math.
All right, so what's another thing that you do in playtesting?
You can test specific rules, so therefore you're trying to pick out specific parts of your game and make sure that those things function well.
Absolutely. And you actually see that, I think, a little bit more once you've done a playtest or two, because when you're starting to make changes, you're like, all right, I'm going to make this change. Like we did this in Relic Hunters constantly. Like,
Yeah.
let's make this change. Okay, let's play.
Yep.
Okay, now make another change. Play.
Sounds a little like Playstorm, but we were really just taking that one thing and trying to like adjust that left, right, center to see if we could home in on what worked really well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The next one is procedurally. So you need to test if your game has stuff on the table, or if you're like Swords Without Master.
Yeah.
Like you need to test the procedural flow of the game.
Yes, you need to make sure that because a lot of people don't. Like, this is the thing that a lot of people I've realized don't think about. Procedures are mechanics.
Oh yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
You need to test the
Oh my
procedures
God.
of your game.
I think we have that as a pin, but just put
Yeah.
procedure as mechanics.
Yeah,
like,
procedures are mechanics.
yeah,
Like,
procedures are mechanics, and
for instance, I was playing Basic Expert Edition D&D last night. There are procedures that go with that game that make that game play a certain way. If you don't play it that way, then it doesn't really feel like BX.
yeah,
Because then it could just feel. I mean, you could use those mechanics and it could feel like Dungeon World.
no, absolutely.
I mean, of course, it's a more deadly version of Dungeon World,
It's a lot more
Yeah.
deadly.
but it's still. I mean, it becomes more freewheeling. But with the procedures in play, it plays like a very specific game.
Yeah.
Like Torchbearer plays a specific way.
And Torchbearer has a lot of procedure.
It
The
does.
card turning and yeah, it's definitely a thing.
How turns work in BX, how torches burn down.
Yep.
How
Did you do for BX? Did you do the whole thing with like the mapper, the caller?
we didn't have a mapper and a caller because we were playing on Roll20, but
Okay.
we did have dynamic lighting, so torches actually shed light in
Sweet.
line of sight. So
Yeah,
torches actually shed light and whatnot. And I was playing a magic user in first level, so I'm useless, right? But I was carrying the torch,
Oh,
so
yeah,
it actually
that's
mattered.
important.
Where I was actually mattered.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that matters then. Like how those and here's the thing in BX, movement happens before you do anything else. You can't move after you do something. So that matters to that game. Like those are procedures. They matter. Okay. And you're testing those things to see how your game how that affects your gameplay
Right.
and how smoothly the game will flow. Like if your game is too mathy, it bogs down in certain places and you can start feeling that
You
and
can
seeing that.
right. If you're doing like a board game, what other people do on their turn
Yes.
is a procedural thing.
How much downtime there is between.
Yes. Yeah. I mean there was a portion of Relic Hunters that we were very concerned about the procedural aspects of that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What else? What else can we look at?
So components, and these are like the pieces of the game on the table, and to see how they work. Like, what are the little bits? How do they work?
Yeah.
Are they good at providing the visual impetus that they need to provide? Are they easily understandable?
Hydra Hackers.
Hydra Hackers is one of those.
Hydra Hackers has a shit ton
Uh,
of table components.
Core Crisis is that.
Yep.
Games that like the Arkham games are very visual because they have so many bits because it's a Fantasy Flight game.
Yep.
Like, and the symbols all mean things. The Star Wars role playing game
Yes.
with all the symbols on the dice. I mean, it takes a little while to get used to it, but once you do, then you can just visually see what's going on.
Did you play 2 years ago at QCC? Did you play the Smirk and Dagger prototype, the Tower game?
The Tower of
The
Madness.
Kerplunk.
Yep.
Yeah, Kerplunk.
Kerplunk meets Arkham Horror.
Yep.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
and that game
Like,
is visually appealing, but,
But
it
the
also
component,
it means something. Yeah,
like making the tower and having the marbles drop out, like Kurt had to see that.
I still haven't seen that game yet.
Now, I mean, I think he's still working on what you call it. I think he's still working on sourcing out the components and stuff.
Yeah,
like that. I talked
because
to him at Gen Con
I
about it.
imagine that game is expensive to make.
That's the thing,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what he's working on. Okay,
So what's next?
one shot. Hello, Senda. You got to test this thing. Like you're gonna run it in a one shot. If it's a role playing,
I'm gonna take a break for a second.
take a
We're
break.
gonna talk about one shots.
We'll talk about campaigns.
It was very recently Senda's birthday,
Yeah.
and we're all gonna sing now.
Oh, we're gonna pause.
Here we go.
Here we go.
On 3.
Oh, and chat room, you as well.
Yep. 1, 2, 3.
Happy
birthday to you.
You.
Happy birthday to you.
You.
Happy birthday, dear Queen Senda.
Queen of the chat room.
Happy birthday to you.
You.
And many more. All right.
Good. That'll
Cool.
keep. Nice sidebar. Nice sidebar.
Let's go with the one shots.
So, if it's a role playing game, because it's going to be run at conventions, because it's going to be run from different places, demos, things like that, you're going to test it in a one shot capacity because you're just going to play it for 4 hours and see what happens.
And some games are actually built just to be that. So you need to make sure that they work that way.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
if your game is designed to be a one shot, can you finish it in under 4 hours?
Yeah. Or in whatever the allotted time
Yeah.
you've decided it lasts for.
Exactly.
Yep.
Which then it is complemented by
The campaign play, that's testing the game's ability to play a long time.
Right.
So what are your mechanics that actually make your game play for multiple sessions?
yeah. Like if you have advancement mechanics, you can't really test that in a one shot.
Nope, you have to play
Like, you
multiple
gotta-
games.
Exactly.
If you have something like a neighborhood mechanic that your neighborhood grows over time, and that neighborhood part of the game only happens every after the end of a session or 2 sessions, then you need to play 1 or
Yes.
2 sessions
Absolutely.
and to see how your neighborhood evolves. Like, that's a thing.
All right, then finally, there's like one more playtest type.
Yeah, what's that?
Break the game.
Yeah, find ways to just nudge it
Right.
where it doesn't go.
And this is where you're trying to exploit the rules of the game.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for holes, and you're looking to crash the game, for lack of a better term.
Now, honestly, I think this applies more often in board game situations than it does to role-playing game situations.
I agree, in part because role-playing games are really complex, and it's easier to do a break the game thing with a board game because it's so much hemmed in.
Mm-hmm.
But
Now, I don't think you can't not break a role-playing game, and it shouldn't be. It should be also there
third
to.
edition.
Yeah, I mean, is that really broken?
Min-max.
Is it really broken though?
I think yes and no.
That's
It's technically
this is the thing that I.
well,
the
it's
thing that you just said
technically
is the
not
thing for me.
broken, but like for instance, haste in 3.0 was too powerful because in 3.5 haste got nerfed.
Yeah.
Rather quickly.
So here's the thing about looking for the breakage of a game, at least in my opinion, real quick. And there's way more that we can go into depth in this for a role-playing game. If one option is outweighing every other option as like taking away other people's fun at the table, taking away other people's enjoyment of what the game is trying to do at the table,
Yes.
then you have a broken mechanic.
Yeah, and if there is a optimal path, like for instance, if the acquisition of 3 feats makes you like nigh invincible,
Mm-hmm.
then your game is broken.
That's right. If you can handle the encounter by yourself when the other 5 characters couldn't handle the encounter at all, then there's a problem.
Right. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think breaking a game is far more common in a board game because the game is so much more finite that you can actually push harder.
Yeah, and I won't even say that. That thing I just said, that could be a thing, right? But like it depends on what your game's trying to do, of course. Right?
Right.
Like if your game is all about fighting and not about anything else, and that happens, then you have a problem.
Yeah.
But
No, I agree.
if your game has like political intrigue and exploration and finding traps and things like that, like then the game is different. Like I was playing BX last night. I'm a magic user, right? I'm fucking useless at level 1.
Oh yeah, you are.
Yeah, like
You're 3 hit points.
is it broken though?
No. It's not broken. I think when we talk about breaks,
Because by the time I'm level 10 and everybody else is level 10, I'm going to be way more of a badass than the rest of them.
yes, you will be.
So that's a design intent.
Assuming you live.
Yeah, assuming I live, but that's an intentive design.
That is a design intent. And we're actually going to talk about that when we talk about finding results. That what you find isn't necessarily a problem.
Yeah, so like I said, board games, it's easier to figure out. Like if there's only one path to victory and it's not like you don't feel like you're ever really making any choices, that's a problem for a board game.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're like let's say you're doing like a bidding mechanic or something like that, like if there's a single strategy that wins every time,
Yeah, that's a
your
problem.
game is broken.
I mean, unless of course it's a race to that or whatever, and your game's actually about randomness and luck.
Yeah, I mean
But
I think it's
even
contextual.
then, you want everything about breaking a game is
I
contextual
guess-
to what the
I
game
guess
is trying to
let's try
accomplish.
let's take a second and try to define that. Breaking a game means that some combination is so good that all other combinations in the game are invalid, or some combination occurs and the game can't proceed.
Yes, that is a really good definition, actually. I mean, I'm sure we could expand it or put addendums to it, but that's a good solid place to start.
Breaking the game.
Breaking the game. Okay.
Breaking the game.
So-
Yeah, all right.
So when we're playtesting,
Yeah.
oh, that's you. Sorry.
That's fine. You should have just rolled with it. We could have gotten through
No,
that.
that's fine.
So what do we like? So if that's what we're setting out to do, right? If that's our list,
Do you
of-
want me to just do it? Like,
No, I'm on it, man. I'm segueing, man. Just give me a second.
all right.
Get on my Segway.
We used to have those.
Rolling on my Segway. Yeah. If those are the different things, the general, the breaking a rule, the one shot, the campaign, all that, what are we hoping to get out of the playtest? Like what is it we try to find?
Well, the first thing we want to know is we want to know that things are working, and we want to know that things that we hoped would happen are actually happening in the game.
Yeah, like we want proof.
Yes.
Like,
Like we wrote these rules. We think they're going to work.
right.
We think all the symbology and all these bits and pieces are going to do what they are supposed to do in the game, and they're going to mean what they're supposed to mean. Now let's go play it to make sure that they're all actually doing the thing.
Right. Like for instance, in Hydra Hackers, that bag drawing mechanic is supposed to be exciting. And I've now play tested it like 5 or 6 times.
By exciting, you mean tense.
Tense, but like people getting like kind of nutty about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've play tested about 6 times now, and there isn't a group that isn't cheering as they're pulling stuff out of that bag. Like it's got it.
It is functioning as intended.
Yeah, its design intent was to make it tense and exciting, and observation at the table, it's delivered.
So far, so good.
That's good.
So yeah, proof that things are working, and that's different from things not breaking. Let's be very clear. Proof that things are working is not the same as shit not breaking, because
true.
Shit not breaking isn't actually proof that anything's working. You just didn't break a thing.
Yeah, because maybe somebody just didn't do a thing, right?
Right, exactly.
That's
All
why
right.
we play things over and over again.
Right, so that's the other one, right? We're looking for problems. Like, I mean, ideally, that's exactly what we want to find.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we want to play test something and then just be like, whoop, that didn't fucking work.
Well, that way we know what to fix.
Right, circle that thing didn't do a...
I mean, the worst thing is when we do a thing, when we play this game like 100 times, and then we let it out into the wild, and the thing we didn't get is the thing that starts rearing its ugly head.
Yeah.
Like, because we had inconclusive results about what we were working on. Like, also, like, well, we think it worked.
Right.
Or when we play something over and over again, it works like half the time, it doesn't work half the time, and we don't know why.
Any inconclusive results are maddening. Like,
Yeah.
they're just... It's same as true, actually, in software testing. Like, when you do software testing and you get, like, one of these bugs where it occurs sometimes and not the other, because what you don't know is you can't find the other variable.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking maddening to sit there and pick through what's going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you hate inconclusive results. You either want problems or you want proof that stuff's working.
Because problems you can fix.
Yeah.
And proof that stuff is working is like, well, good.
It's working.
Let's just, and then
Like,
we watch to
leave
make sure
it.
it works again.
Yes.
Right? So the next thing that we're going to talk about is playtesting. It's completely a skill.
Yeah, if you are playtesting, you can come into it with no understanding whatsoever. Game designers will use people who don't know anything about playtesting and just have them play games. It's perfectly fine. But you actually can learn how to playtest.
Yeah.
That actually makes you a better playtester.
Yeah, because the idea is to give information so that things can be, some of the stuff we just talked about, like you're giving information so that people can fix the things that are wrong.
Exactly.
Or know that things that are right are right.
Feedback is the key.
Yeah,
because
feedback.
if you play test and just go, "Oh, that was fun,"
Yeah,
and that's all you say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Okay.
talk. We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna
Yeah.
talk about what makes good feedback, what makes bad feedback. But you're absolutely right. Yes, I'm just gonna stop right there.
So-
yes, you are absolutely
So
right.
Phil, if I was going to try to learn how to be a better playtester, like what are some things I would look at? Like where would I start studying?
So if I was gonna hunt around, my background's in software development,
Mm-hmm.
so that's how I learned to test things. Like I learned to test things in software development, like edge case testing and user acceptance testing, things like that. You can look that up on the internet. I'm sure there are probably some good articles that aren't going to be mind-numbingly boring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, software testing is its own art. Like I have a friend of mine, my old manager from when I was a project manager. She runs a software QC group, and they're serious. There's 5 or 6 testers, and it's an art form for how they craft tests and execute them and regression test and all that stuff. So you can look that stuff up. Don't fall too deep in the rabbit hole. There's a lot of information in there, but it's a good place to start.
Another place that you can go look is the scientific method. I mean, we all learned this stuff in high school, and in some cases grammar school, and in some cases college. It was just reiterated to us over and over again, and how we come up with a hypothesis, we test the hypothesis to see if it functions, and then we iterate on that hypothesis. It's a lot like software programming. I mean, it's kind of the same
Little bit.
methodology, but it's something we can understand.
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot of times. So there'll be times when we're doing playtesting, especially in because I always fall back to Relic Hunters because we did so much playtesting.
yes,
for Relic
it's
Hunters.
the one we have the most experience with.
Right, where we would say a specific thing, like we're looking for this event.
Yes.
Like how frequently do we go to the black dice?
Yes, that was a thing, and we
Right.
started tracking it.
Yeah. In fact, our hypothesis was we're not getting to the black dice fast, often enough.
Yeah, and we had to figure out a way to make that happen.
Right. So first we actually played the game a bunch of times and we're like, is that true? Or is it just perception? And then we played it and we're like, nope, seems to be true. We're not getting up to that tier fast enough. And then we went after certain theories about why.
Yes.
Because you're crapping out too fast or, it's this. And then we started the tweaking of the rules to address it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So like I said before, you actually can get really deep on
You
this.
can, but there's that thing about what is the purpose of the game that you're making? Are you making it to be a product, or are you making it to be an art piece? Because if it's an art piece, you can take as much time as you want. If it's a product, then you have to get it out eventually.
Yeah, so, like, you want to do the best amount of testing you can. You don't want the core mechanics or anything that's heavily used to be screwed up.
Correct.
But you can't test everything, and you can't test for every situation. I mean, this is why software gets patched.
Yeah.
This is why there are FAQs for games.
This is why there's second editions of role-playing games.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I mean, this is why D&D runs a massive FAQ. Like, that's a patch set.
Yeah, except it's way less than it's ever been because of that giant playtest.
Exactly.
And
but we still patch from time to time.
But let's take a look back at the worst version of this ever, which was, in a lot of ways, at least in my opinion, at least in recent memory, when we go from 3.0 to 3.5.
Oh, yeah.
Because of how messed up the game was from 3.0.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had to fix it by printing out whole new books.
Yeah, to cut down on the craziness.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're starting to get into a topic here about complexity.
Yes. Are we talking about that now?
We're talking about role-playing games and how we can't test for everything.
Well,
it's really a function of complexity.
Well, yeah, that's because the more complex the game is, the more things that you have to test. And like you said, you can't test everything. I mean, that's pretty much the crux of the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is where...
And that depends on subsystems, though. Like, the bigger your game, the more complex it is. Games like One Last Job, cha-ching, or
Cha-ching.
or something like Royal Blood, like,
Cha-ching.
they don't take as much time because they're smaller games.
Yes.
They don't have as much going on. There's not as many things. Like, if you take Fate, for example, Fate has how aspects work.
Yes.
It has how the dice interact with the skills. It has how the milestone system works with all of that.
Fate point economy.
The Fate point economy.
Your challenges, your contests, and your conflicts.
Those three systems are how those...
Those are three subsystems.
Three subsystems for three different kinds of encounters or situations that occur in play.
Right, your milestone system.
Mm-hmm. I already mentioned that, but that's fine. Yeah,
I'm actually tracking through the book chapter. Sorry.
The introductory how to make your game stuff, because that's a whole completely different part of the game.
Character generation.
Yep, and that all ties into the rest of those things.
Right. So that as a game isn't terribly complex. I'll tell you the one that makes me shudder.
It was kind of complex.
What's that?
It wasn't, and it's still kind of complex because look at how many iterations of Fate it took to get where we are now.
Correct. But when you look at like D&D, what makes me, and even D&D will admit they can't do this, is that you can't playtest spell interaction.
You can't playtest spell interaction.
You can't playtest all of them.
Yeah.
Like the multitude of spells, you can't combine them. You can't combine all of them in playtest situations and see what happens. And that's where, same thing with feats and stuff like that. That's where you see like where the min-maxers.
Yeah, but they kind of did with this last edition.
Okay.
Because the spell system is simpler and the way that they interact is less pervasive because they built mechanics around that not being a thing.
Right. So in 3.0, like
that was insane.
Right. So going back to 3.0, like there were plenty of cases where people realized like if you take this spell and throw this spell on top of it, like all of a sudden you're like, you're like a huge dragon.
Yeah,
or
pretty much.
Like you just smacked a storm giant down.
Yeah, about 7 levels before you should have.
Yeah. And I mean, part of that was things like if you look at the original haste, right? The original haste gave you one extra action.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the high level wizards in my game do shit like haste, enervate.
Mm-hmm.
And a target lost like 14 levels of spell casting. Like
that spellcaster is now useless.
Right. And then the rest of the team just like walks in, bonks them over the head, encounter over.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Tom once killed like 2 small dragons with twin lightning bolts.
Whether that is a problem with the game or not, that's up for debate.
True.
Right.
But again, in the myriad of things to test, testing haste plus different spells,
it obviously didn't happen. And if it did, they were like, eh.
Right. Until game masters were like, this shit sucks.
Well, so this is why it didn't work, because that thing breaks the whole idea of their CR rating system.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It didn't work then.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a 12th level magic user reduce a small dragon to the scene in The Fifth Element. Like, where's the leader? Boom, dead. Yeah. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, like that was
we're going to have to go to absurd level encounters now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, the more complexity in a system, the harder it's going to be to test all the permutations, which is very tricky.
Yeah, and to the point where in 5th edition D&D, they even go out and say right now, like, our game only functions with the core book plus one other book, because that's what we play test for. We don't play test for you using 17 different books. If you do, the game will probably break, because there will probably be combinations that you can figure out that will mess everything up, and we can't play test for all of that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that's great, because...
And there's still combinations that kind of get wonky, because there's still all these edge case questions, like what happens when you polymorph a dragon, stick him in a crack, and then unpolymorph him. Yeah. I mean, I know what I would do, which is make the ground explode, and you will all just like get earthquaked, and then the dragon will try to eat you after it loses half its hit points. But still,
sure. I mean, mine used to be flesh to stone, stone to mud. that was my AD&D combo, like 2 wizards, right? Flesh to stone, stone to mud.
Yep.
Let's move on.
You're dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, if you're designing a game using a known system, so if I'm making a Fate game,
sure,
right? I'm PK Sullivan. I'm making 3 Rocketeers, right? Awesome.
Ding.
You actually played it last.
We did. We played it.
Yep.
By the way, we'll talk about that in the after show.
Yeah. Then you're taking advantage of the playtesting that's already been done in that core system. Like, there's a certain amount of stability you can count on, and then you're testing your changes.
Yeah, that's the only thing you're looking at.
Yeah, you're just testing, like, in Powered by the Apocalypse, like, you don't really need to test if moves work.
We know how moves work.
Moves
right?
work.
We're testing the moves.
Right, like, it did what you put in the move.
Yeah, did it function the way that we wanted it to function?
Exactly. So you get to take advantage of those. And there's an argument for using existing systems. Like, that's an argument for, like, if you're going to make an investigation game, what are you doing different that, Gumshoe isn't doing? And knowing that Gumshoe's been play tested, like, a ton of times.
Yeah, I mean, like, the idea of Gumshoe is the thing that we should be designing around, I think. But the mechanic is still, like, you can't use that mechanic everywhere, because it's about, like, you have a set of skills.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's a heavy lift, actually.
Oh, designing the game, and this is a good topic. Let's talk about in a future episode, designing using an existing system and the places where you kind of push it past that system.
Yeah, because in a lot of cases you can't just use that system, because, like I said, if you want to use Gumshoe, you have to have a giant skill list.
Yes.
Because they have to have points that you can spend.
But even then, when you look at Gumshoe game to Gumshoe game, each one of them has that core, but then each one of them has, like, a little different thing. Like, Black Agents has mechanics that are not in Trail of Cthulhu.
Yeah, it's got the thriller chase rules.
Yeah,
it's got heat,
and those things had to be play tested.
Yeah, it's got the conspiramid and the vampire building thing.
But then you don't have to lean as heavily on does investigation work.
Correct.
Right. It's also going to matter whether or not you can use the system that you want to use to develop your thing.
Well, that's a licensing thing.
If it's not something that you can legally do, then you.
Yeah, but you can always use the idea. The idea of Gumshoe is
concept.
The concept is you're going to give them the clue. Like, it's really what you're asking is, and even then that's not actually true. I mean, you want them to get the clue. I'm just talking about this because this is a thing for playtesting. When you're thinking about, like, design and then playtesting your thing, like, is the ideology that you're bringing to the table going to be the thing that your mechanic is actually doing?
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing that you should think about. I guess that's where I'll stop there, because it's a completely different topic.
Yeah, let's check out how the chat room is doing.
So what's up with the chat room?
It's a little light tonight, but they are focused for the most part on topic.
Weird.
It's a little bit weird.
Who's all in there?
We've got GM Jerry, Ange, Brandon, Eric Simon's here.
Hey, Eric, how's it going?
Jim McClure.
Gator.
Yep.
Eric. Other Eric.
Yeah.
Gator.
Jerry brought up a good point. He said he thinks it's important with a game that has variable generators like dice to have a math genius play tested a few times. Not just is it possible, but also how often is it possible, and does taking this or that ability skew the game too much? For example, in a roll under 3d6 game, the difference between roll under 9 and roll under 11 is huge.
There's a website, and I can't remember the name of it right now. I will try to find it while we're sitting here talking. There's a website where you can get those probabilities by, you just put in the dice, like you just do it like as a command line. Like you tell it, like, 3D whatever, roll under whatever number,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll generate the bell curves
Yeah.
and let you see like standard deviation wise, like what's most probable, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's also handy to have a stats guy like Matt.
If you can, that's kind of a unique skill. Like
If you can
the
do
kind
it.
of thing that Matt. So we're talking about Matt
Matt
Nigley
Nigley.
from
Yeah.
Gnome Stew. He is a professional statistician, and he took a crack at doing some of the probabilities, modeling how relic hunters worked, and even then, it was still kind of tough for him to model
Yeah.
all the ways the dice interacted.
Yeah.
Jim McClure says any dice is the website.
Thank you, Jim McClure.
Thank
there we
you.
go.
That's the web. Anydice.com, I believe it is.
There will not be a link in the show notes because I'll never remember it unless Bob writes it down.
Oh,
I just opened the tab, so I also remembered. But
Okay.
Any dice is fantastic. Any dice will let you plug in dice combos, and then it will do the probability curves.
Nice.
So that helps tremendously in seeing like where target numbers fall and things like that.
Anything else?
we are on. We're good.
Okay, let's move on. So, being a good playtester, how do we be a good playtester,
Yeah. So
Phil?
so let's say that you get invited to be a playtester.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, and you did. You
I
got to be a
did.
playtester recently for Satanic Panic.
Yes, I did.
So, being a good playtester, I would say the first part is document your experience. Don't fix the game.
Unless you're asked to fix the game.
Yeah, that'll be the caveat. Unless you're specifically asked to, don't try fixing the game for the designer. You just want to tell your experience. Like, this game, this mechanic feels clunky. Like, don't say like, this mechanic feels clunky, and here's what I think you need to do. You need to drop step 4, and you need to add in, cards.
Yeah.
Because,
Nobody wants to hear that. It's not productive, really.
well, it's tough because the designer has something in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're trying to design past it, one, you may not understand the system well enough to know what other things push upon. Like, maybe taking step 4 out and putting cards in breaks like 10 other subsystems.
That's right.
So you don't want to, and this happens, God, as a software tester and as times as a software developer. Man, if I wouldn't lose my shit in meetings when testers would start trying to tell you how to fix the problem. Like, well, you need a do loop here that, until this, and it's like, look, I'll handle the coding part. Are you just annoyed that the button is, inactive for too long? Like, I'll fix that part. Just tell me that's not working.
Do you know that I wish, in a lot of ways, that that Hydro hackers, that the mechanics of the game, even if they are still using that move trigger thing, that it wasn't rolling dice, it was pulling stuff out of the bag
For what, like checks?
for the randomizer.
Oh, it's interesting, but now then it gets really complicated.
And
Like,
I know. Like, how cool would the game be if it was that? I'm just saying, like, that's me saying, that's me trying to fix the game or change the game instead of actually, like, documenting my experience.
yeah, I mean, in that part, it's like, well, I guess so see if I can do this without sidebarring too hard. So it's a great suggestion, right? Because as you're saying it, I'm actually pondering it in my head. But now I'm then pondering, like, well, how is that going to work?
It doesn't
in
really.
addition with the regular hydro hack mechanics, and then what do you structurally have to change in the moves? Because to some extent, undying is like that, and so like there's like, as a designer, what just happened in my head when you said that was I could see the ripples. And then it becomes like too many ripples, and then it's like, I can't, like,
It's a lot of, it would be a huge lift from where the game already is at.
exactly. And we've already done 1 or 2 huge lifts.
Yep.
But all right, so going back, document your experience for the test for the designer. Don't tell them how to fix it. Let the designer do that part.
Which I feel a little bad because we kind of got, me and Rob Stith, we kind of got in a little bit of like that with Satanic Panic because Jim was like, what was good and what was bad, and we were talking about it, and one half of his game is fantastic and the other half of his game isn't done yet.
Right. So can I caveat that? The caveat is, if you're playtesting with a group of game designers, so Metatopia, for instance, you can break this rule.
You can.
You can. Like, you can tell your playtesters, hey, you're all game designers. What do you think needs to be fixed?
Yeah.
But I would say in general, the proper etiquette is, if unless told, offer what your experience is, not necessarily the fix. If you're asked to fix it, by all means, provide, what insight you have with the understanding that you may not understand everything that's going on in the game.
That's true. Another thing for being a good playtester is that you can describe what you were doing before the problem in a game occurred. So, like, what was the thing that you just did that made the game not work as intended?
Yeah, because a lot of times it's not the actual role that was the problem. It's like what happened up before. This happens in software testing all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, a bug only appears when the user clicked this text box before they hit the enter button.
Yeah.
Hitting the enter button wasn't the problem. It's the text box.
So this game was fine until I casted haste.
Right. And then it's like, oh, okay, let's...
Well, now we've done that thing that you do in D&D, which breaks everything, is break the action economy. Because when you can do more things, you can murder things harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What's another thing?
To that same, along those same lines, describe your feelings about the game, but try not to infer the mechanical whys. Like, I was very bored when it wasn't my turn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's
important.
That's
yeah.
legit.
That's important to know.
But saying something like, I was bored when it wasn't my turn because I think that I think your action economy is too complex. It may be that.
Yeah. So the better question to ask as the game designer, or the better thing, is to say, it sort of leads into what you just said. Like, if you were bored because you felt it was slow,
Right.
then you say, well, why did you feel it was slow? Because then you can start asking that question to everybody.
Correct.
And then you can get that data. Like, if everybody says because everybody was rolling too much, then that's a thing, right?
Oh, yeah,
If
absolutely.
100 people say it, it's a thing. If one person says it, it's not.
Yeah.
That's about collecting data, right?
Exactly.
All right. So
yeah, and it's important. Again, what you're trying to do is trying not to fix the game.
yeah, because really the designer wants to hear the experience, but as playtesters, we should trust that the designer understands the mechanics of the game and how to adjust them better than we do as playtesters.
Yeah. Now, again, if I'm at Metatopia and Rob Donahue tells me that this game seems slow, I'm gonna ask Rob Donahue, like,
Why?
please tell me why you
Yeah,
think this is
because
slow.
some people just see mechanics.
Yeah.
Some people are really good developers.
Exactly.
All right. So now that we've talked about being a good playtester, what do we do as designers when we get the results of the playtesting?
Yeah. So, all right. So first of all, now I know this, you and I both have backgrounds where we're comfortable with this, right? Like, as a writer, you have had your writing critiqued.
Mm-hmm.
As a scientist, I've had to present papers and have my positions challenged and things like that.
And even beyond that, with the game design stuff, we've actually critiqued each other a lot.
Correct. Now, critique is not easy.
No, it's not.
If you have a thin skin and you're designing a game, you will then learn to develop a thicker skin, because your design may not work the way it does, and you may not like what you hear in playtesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you may think, like, I got this, and then you bring it to the table. Well, let's pause for a moment and tell the actual story of the first game of Relic Hunters back when it was Plunder Dice.
Yeah.
Bob brought Plunder Dice to a game night we were having. Now, we were having a game night of just board games.
And this is pre-encoded, isn't it? Or is this like the early
encoded.
encoded?
Really early
like
encoded.
Dangerous Space Jail encoded.
Yeah, Dangerous
Yep.
Space Jail encoded days. Bob brings Plunder Dice. I made a game. It was after Gen Con. I made a game. Can I bring it to the game night? Sure, bring it to game night. You and I had just finished playing Escape.
Mm-hmm.
We sit down at another table.
Yep.
Bob brings out the game. We play a hand of it, and it's not
So
terrible.
So Phil says this game's okay.
It's okay.
It's
Like,
okay.
it wasn't.
This is my favorite story of the whole development process for this game, because we actually played like 2 rounds of it,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
two iterations
Right.
of it, and
I wasn't wowed, right? Like,
Yeah.
I played it and I was like, it's okay.
the general consensus around the table was like, oh yeah, okay.
Not me.
And Chris has this look on his face like he's a mile off, and I can tell the wheels are turning. And I learned enough about Chris at this point. He was still new to me. We hadn't really become friends yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I had learned through what we'd already been doing with the stuff that we had been working on. I said, okay, I know a little bit about what Chris does. And I knew that when the wheels were turning like that, I said, okay, he's figuring something out. And he looks up from the table and he looks me in the face and he says, this game sucks.
Now, at that moment,
And those were literally his words. This
It
game
was.
sucks.
right at that moment, you could have just scooped everything off the table.
Yeah, I could have been like, oh.
Well, I followed it up with a statement right after that.
Well,
But you didn't even need to, because, like I said, I knew at that point enough about you that there was a reason why you had the faraway look, and then you said it sucks because something was wrong with it.
but here's here's the good thing about Chris's background.
Yeah.
As a writer, and I'm sure. Tell me if I'm wrong, but you've been taught, like, you say a thing and then you provide something constructive right behind it.
Well, yeah, because why bother saying anything bad if you can't actually fix it?
Exactly.
Or unless you're just going to be like, well, here's why it's hopeless.
Now, what happened the moments after that was a fury of just a fury of ideas.
Like how to make it a
Yep.
better game. Which it ended up being a lot better game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it was still not the right game.
It still wasn't
Nope.
the right game, which we'll get to in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is when I talked about at the top of the segment, one of the 3 pivotal play tests.
Yeah.
That was the first pivotal playtest. But as a designer, to make a thing and then somebody tell you, like, this thing sucks, as a new designer,
Yeah.
that can hurt. Like,
Can.
that hurts your ego.
And that's all about context too, because if that was like a random person at like Con on the Cob or something, where I'm like, hey, I made this thing, what do you think? And this stranger looks at me and goes, this game sucks, that would have been a totally different impact.
Yeah.
I probably still would have been like, well, what makes it suck? What, I would have still asked for that information, but knowing that it was Chris who said that, I said, oh, he's got a reason. He knows something that I didn't catch.
Right.
And now I'm going to find out how to make this game better.
Yeah, I mean, so thick skin, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the first part. Now, that said, when you get advice, not every observation is a thing that you have to act upon.
Correct.
You actually have to take that. You have to take that feedback, and look at it critically. For a number of reasons, right?
Some people just don't understand your game as well as you do. Like,
Yeah.
like the thing that they say, it might be right for something else if you were intending it, but it has nothing to do with what you were intending.
Right. It could be that person just doesn't like playing those kinds of games.
I read a review of the adventure that I had written for Baldwin Games, the Core 1-3, and the reviewer said there's almost no possible way to achieve the optimal result of this adventure as players, and I'm like, well, it's working exactly the way that I intended
right.
it.
Sneezak doesn't have optimal choices.
There actually is a way to succeed at it, but it's like a 10% chance.
Yeah.
Like, and it was designed that way on purpose.
Yeah. And those aren't things that we often share in the notes, so people don't actually know that that's there.
It's true.
But the point is well taken, that sometimes the feedback that comes back is the people's preference. And so I guess the way you do it is, I always collect the feedback. I always document the feedback. And if I don't act on something, it's still in my list of potential problems, because the other thing you want to look for is patterns.
Yes.
Or you want to start hearing the same thing in a number of places. So if one person tells you it's slow and no one else does, you might be like, well, it's that person's problem.
Yeah.
But if you go play test it 20 more times and 6 more people say it's slow,
You better check it.
now you got to start wondering, like, maybe this game maybe it's not super slow, but it's bugging a certain group of people. Is there anything I can do to speed this up?
When Relic Hunters, we sent it out for that first playtest, it was slow and it was too mathy. That was like what everybody said. And it's actually what I said when I came back, and I was like, I bet everybody saying it's too mathy, and sure enough, everybody was saying it was too mathy.
Yep, absolutely. So so you have to look at those patterns. You have to look and you have to make decisions, because if you chase every rabbit, you'll be all over the place.
Yeah.
Sometimes you stick by your design, but sometimes you kill your darlings.
Yeah, sometimes you do.
I mean, that is a thing. Like,
It sucks.
I mean, yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to just look and be like, well, this isn't going to do it. Like, this isn't going to work.
So once you get that feedback and you decided what you want to deal with, you need to address those issues that you've decided are actually issues with changes to your game.
Oh yeah.
Change the mechanics, change the procedure. I mean, sometimes it's even just change the tone. Because if you can change the tone, then people will fall in line. Like, I mean, sometimes the mechanics don't reflect the tone that you're actually providing.
Right.
So, I mean, then you can do that also.
And sometimes the change is weird, because the change that you wind up making, like, let's say the game is slow. The change may not be in that one particular mechanic. It may be the mechanic adjacent to it.
That's right.
that takes it away.
Well, we just took all the math out of Relic Hunters.
Yeah,
We turned it into a token system.
We're gonna we'll get to that.
Yeah. A game of addition and math to a game of set collection. It was really clever, actually. I'm glad that we got there. But once you've decided to change those mechanics, make those shifts, then you just start the testing process all over.
Yes. And that's it. I mean, that's the loop.
That's the loop.
Yep.
It's the loop. You build, you playtest, you fix, you build, you playtest, you fix.
And sometimes those loops are faster, and sometimes those loops are slower. Because like there's the playstorming loop when you're trying to do all the stuff at the beginning, trying to get your mechanics all right, trying to get everything.
So let's talk for a second, because we didn't at the top. Let's talk about playstorming.
Sure. So playstorming is like, well, here's a game. Somebody brings a game to the table.
Yep.
And we start playing the game. But as we're playing the game, we're like, that rule doesn't seem to work. Let's try this thing. That rule doesn't seem to work. Let's try this thing. And if it's a short game, you're doing it every iteration over and over and over again. So if your game only plays in like 20 minutes, you can do this like 6 or 7 times in a row. If it's a role-playing game, you can just start adding mechanics and taking away mechanics and seeing how things function.
So there was a point at the end of Relic Hunters, before we've considered it done, where we were down here for a day, whole day. And on the dry erase board, we had a list of all the potential rules changes that we could make.
Yep.
And we just played until we got to a point and crossed a rule off the list and was like, put in the other rule. Let's play.
And the reality of the situation for that was we were actually done with that game. We just didn't know it. That was us making sure.
It was. And that's actually it's actually an important thing. And I guess we'll use that to kind of wrap this one little bit up. There's a done. And you're not going to know, like, it's not perfect. A game is never perfect. A game is never flawless. And perfection is the enemy of good enough.
It's also the enemy of done.
Right. And done is a very generic term, but there's a point where you play a game and you're like, you know what? I can't see anything else I need to change in this game.
Yeah.
And we got to that point with Relic Hunters. Like, we played that game like thousands of times and finally looked at it one day and I was like, I can't see anything else left to fix. And then you all looked at me and were like, we can't either. And it was like, okay, like, let's stop. Like, let's not mess with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So done is tough because as a designer, you have to make that call.
We have to, I mean, you can always mess with the thing, right?
And guarantee, and I promise you that when you're done and you release it into the wild, someone's going to find something.
Yeah, something's going to be wrong with it.
It's just like no matter how much you proofread a manuscript, once it goes out the door, somebody's going to find something.
Something.
Yep.
Yeah.
No matter how good you do. The trick is, again, with done versus perfection, is did you seal all the major cracks? Are there no major flaws? Does the game do what it's supposed to do, kind of thing?
Exactly.
Okay. So, do we have time to talk about some of our babies?
I think so. I think we had 4 listed. We're only going to talk about 2. So we'll talk about
2?
We'll talk about Relic Hunters and we'll talk about Hydra Hackers.
Okay. So for Relic Hunters, we did a whole bunch of different types of testing.
We
right?
did,
Like we did
yes.
general rules.
Mm-hmm.
We did specific rules a lot.
Yes, we did.
We tested procedure.
Mm-hmm.
We tested components because there are cards, there are dice, and tokens.
Yep.
And we attempted to break the game on a number of occasions.
Yeah, and eventually we got to the point where we really couldn't.
Right.
Which was great.
And by break the game, like we played with, I know when I tried to break the game, I played with a specific strategy, which was like always go to the black dice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like never make a choice. Always push to go to the black dice.
And I often played where I would just stay in the white dice.
Right. And we like played to see like can you dominate this game if you only go to the black dice, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we played that game internally.
Yep. We played it with friends
lot.
and family. We did all the play testing, really.
We really did. We did friends and family. We actually sent it out.
I feel like most games that you play should be done with every single kind of play testing.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
We played this game with designers. Now, let me talk about the 3 critical play tests. We talked about the one, the first one, which was the one where Chris told Bob this game sucks, and the game drastically changed. The second one, which Chris hinted to, was we did an external play test where we made demo sets and we sent them out. And one of the people that we sent it out to was Dave Chalker, the designer of Get Bit and a number of other games.
Mm-hmm.
and
Heist.
and Dave
Heat.
Heat.
and Dave warned us. He was like, "My playtest group is really good. Be prepared for some, some serious critique."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
Bring it.
"Bring it on." And Dave's critique came back, and it was many pages.
Yes.
And the original Plunder Dice was a game where you rolled dice and you calculated up a score. It was a push your luck game to get a numeric score,
Mm-hmm.
and that numeric score was fairly big. Like you could get like 200 points in a turn.
Yeah, it's a little mathy.
And that was
Very mathy.
and that was Dave's that was Dave's critique. It was very mathy. And shortly after we got the playtest results, Dave was in town for the Gathering of Friends
Mm-hmm.
and that private gaming thing. And Bob and I got to go out for sushi with Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually kind of talked a lot about that. So what happened was when we all got that feedback, we removed all of the math from the game and changed it to a token system.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a radical change in the game.
Sure
Which,
was.
interestingly enough, was the way the game started. When I first came up with it, I had a pile of tokens in the middle of the table as a treasure
Yep.
pile. And as you rolled the dice, you pulled tokens from it. And then I changed it to point gathering and adding, and then showed it to these guys. And
Yeah,
then Chris
I-
said it sucked.
I never played the
And we
game with
went and
tokens.
went and went, and then we changed it back to tokens.
It's funny because if we had seen the token one, I wonder if the math one would have ever existed.
Probably not.
Probably not.
But we did. We went down a line, we got feedback, and we were like, well, let's change the game. Then we changed it, and once we changed it, we like reset all the testing. We went back to internal testing, then friends and family, and then we started taking it out into public and showing it to other people. The last critical play test was 2 years ago at Queen City Conquest. Kurt Covert from Smirk and Dagger Games was there, and there was an opportunity to play test your game with Kurt.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought the game to Kurt, and we brought it as Plunder Dice at the time. And Kurt played that game 3 times, I think,
3 times, yeah.
and looked at us and was like, I can't see anything that I would change in this game.
And he was another one. He had that far off look in his eye for a minute or two, and I could see that the wheels were turning.
And he
And-
tried
and
tried
yeah,
really hard. Like
I can't find anything wrong with
he
this.
didn't particularly like the hidden card.
Nope.
And then after he saw it in play, he was like, nope, that works. But it was a critical play test for us for a couple of reasons. One, it was proof that we were done.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I think we still dicked around with that game afterwards.
A little bit.
A little bit. But Kurt wanted to evaluate the game as a potential piece for Smirk and Dagger, and already had a pirate game and asked us if we could reskin the game. And we did. And that's how it became Relic Hunters.
Yep.
And ultimately, and we've talked about this on the show, Kurt didn't take it because it isn't backstabby enough.
Yeah, it's not a Smirk and
It was-
Dagger game.
It
Yeah.
just,
And it's
and we
not.
knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And we didn't want to make it that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
We tried.
we tried.
Yeah, we did.
We tried and
failed.
it just didn't work. And so we settled the game out, and it's done now. Like we're still shopping it around, and we won't say who we're shopping it to, but somebody has it and is looking at it.
God, I think I've said it on the mics before.
Yeah, I don't know. I
We
don't want to say.
probably have, but we'll just leave it.
We'll leave it as that. And we'll shop it around if we have to. If and to answer Gator's question, if we can't get a company to buy it, then yes, we will be stupid enough to Kickstarter it ourselves.
And I figured out kind of how we can do that. So.
Yes, we don't really want to do that, but
During the course of the process of designing this and developing this game, there have been a couple of times where we all looked at each other and went, if we can't find somebody to buy this, I really don't want to make this ourselves because it's
it's a lot more work. But let me say this. But let me say this about that game. Having played that game, I think hundreds of times now, I have enough confidence in that game that it deserves to be made. And if we can't get a company to buy the design, then I want to make the game. Like I'm proud.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that game. Like we made a thing and it's good.
And we know enough now that I think we could get it to the point where we could set up a Kickstarter for a minimum print run that is the bare minimum we would have to produce to have a company make the dice and stuff like that because we can't make the dice ourselves.
It's a nightmare, but yeah.
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 It's not an easy task.
Yeah.
Can,
I mean,
can you see the dread on my face?
Yeah.
all of us, like none of us want to do it. Like,
There's
But
a
that's
bit of-
okay because somebody's going to buy it.
There's a little bit of dread.
yeah, I kind of want to just, there's still a place where I want to go if we can't, if the current place doesn't take it, which is, I think Evil Hat was looking at games.
Oh, well, that's good.
Like, it's pulpy. Evil Hat likes pulp.
Sure.
Anyway, all right. So that's
Relic Hunters.
That's Relic Hunters.
So why don't we talk about the game that I've actually had very little to do with so far?
Hydra Hackers.
Yeah, I have no. Me and Bob have been busy doing something else.
Yeah, you guys have been working on Core Crisis, which you've been doing your own playtesting on.
We have.
So Hydra Hackers, listen, we've, just to kind of speed through this, I've done general rule testing by just running it as one shots. I've done specific rule testing. So when I worked up the hacking the bag mechanic, I spent a weekend where I didn't engage any of the other rules. I just loaded the bag and played, I think, about 60 hacks in like 2 days. And I would just play them like super fast, like just draw tokens, roll dice, and then like I was just tuning it to get like the right feel. Like, is it escalating fast enough? So here's the thing, the design thing. That bag thing is a hack, and it's a hack / heist. Like any heist, the faster you pull it off, the better it is. The longer it takes, it becomes increasingly dangerous. And that was a aesthetic I was looking for in that game.
That's what you want, yeah.
And that's exactly what happens. If that hack starts to bog down and you have to start making too many rolls, or dicking around with the flow of the bag, like bleeding the line and sampling it or whatever, it starts to get really unstable and dangerous.
Yeah.
So the teams that have done the best on them are the ones who have like really good luck pulling good stuff out of the bag early on, and they complete quickly. Where it gets scary is when it bogs down, and that's actually proven out now. Like I did it a whole bunch of times in like the lab setting, but I've also done it. I've seen it happen at the table that way as well.
Good. That's good then.
Yeah,
that's the way it's supposed to work.
We've tested components because there are cards and tokens and bags and shit that go around the table. So that is a thing, and it's going to be play tested campaign wise. I'm actually going to run it in a campaign very shortly, after the holidays, so that I can actually see the whole game persist.
Which means I should probably read it before then and make sure that it looks okay from my point of view.
You should probably read the neighborhood mechanics.
I should definitely do that. I should probably read the whole game at this point.
You probably could. It's like 80 something pages.
Yeah.
Anyway, in terms of how we play tested it, again, I've isolated the Hydra hack mechanic. I've played the shit out of that.
Yeah, you played it with friends and family. You've played it with strangers.
I have indeed.
The only thing we haven't done is that final process, which is letting other people run it.
And that's because there's like nothing written about the setting in it.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Well, that's actually what I'm working on now.
Yeah. Okay. So that's us talking about playtesting. So, what's going on in the chat room for life?
Oh, it's a good bunch.
Is it a good bunch? Do they have anything that they want to ask us or talk about, or should we just move on?
We've got a couple of things. GM Jerry asked a little bit earlier, how do you politely ask a designer, what is it you wanted us to do / get out of this? And
I think
we
you
had
just asked
a couple
them
of interesting things. And I said, honestly, that should be one of the first things that the designer tells you before you play the game. This is... Depends on the game, but in general...
I will agree and disagree. There are times where I will tell that to somebody because I want to see if they agree. But sometimes I don't want to say anything.
Because you want to get that...
I want to see if... Because if I tell you this game is supposed to be tense, then it's in your head.
Yeah.
To Jerry's point, though, if I think that you just ask that question to the designer, just like that, like what were you intending, and you don't have to be like, you actually just ask it in the neutral tone, like what were you intending us to get out of this game? Like,
exactly.
What was the purpose or the point of play? Because I want to make sure that what you were going for is what I got out of it, and I'm not misinterpreting or misconstruing, because there's always the possibility that I just don't like playing the kind of game that you designed. But the game could also be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like not every game is for everybody.
Yeah.
Like there's a big difference between how, basic expert edition D&D plays and how Dungeon World plays. Like those games aren't the same game, even though they're kind of doing the same thing.
And Jerry just actually amended his question. I kind of meant in the middle of the game when a mechanic or something doesn't seem to be working, which is a good point, because if you're right in the middle of the flow.
That one I don't know.
So if I'm formally playtesting, I will lay down the ground rules, which is I want to playtest through this wonky or not, and I don't want to fix anything in the middle of it. if I'm playing with strangers. If I'm playing internally, I will stop a game and be like, all right, let's fix this thing. So the way I would do it is actually just write it down. Like, write your note down and just be like...
Yeah, write your note down.
Like, just with a note card, be like, okay, I did this, during the action economy mechanic, this thing seems busted.
Assuming the mechanic isn't breaking play. Because if the mechanic breaks play, then the game master or the designer has to game master around that.
And that's exactly what you do. You just be like, oh, okay, well that thing broke. All right, let's just do a simple roll.
Yeah, if they didn't say that though, then that's one of those things. Like, just write it down. Because if play breaks, the game master the designer / game master should just stop it and be like, well, this is what we're gonna do, and we'll move on.
Right, and to be honest, this is why you go through those stages of testing. Like, if a game breaks down while I'm playing it with you guys, I don't care. I'll stop. We can stop playing and fix it. But if the game breaks when I'm with a group of strangers, I'm going to GM right around that.
Yep.
I'm just going to be like, make a roll under 10, you're good.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
We're now vague posting about a particular thing that Matt Morrow has done.
Matt Morrow entered the room, and I said he might have made one of the most badass covers for a product I've ever seen.
I feel like Matt should just go drop that in the.
No, you should not.
Okay, never mind, Matt.
Sorry, Matt, but hold on to it for a little bit. We're vague posting.
Yeah, there was a conversation about that.
Yeah,
I will say this: if we're going to drop it anywhere, the patrons should get to see it.
Or the people in the Slack room for life.
It's pretty much the Slack room or the patron. Well, the Slack room is the patron.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm okay doing that. I don't want to dump that thing out in the general public. It's so good.
It is really good.
Yeah, we're gonna figure that out, and then we'll.
It's a John Arcadian Matt Morrow collaboration, and it is.
Oh, I'm also helping with the text parts of it now.
No, I'm saying the cover.
No, yeah, the cover.
John art directed Matt, and as usual, Matt is slaying it.
Yep, absolutely. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah, let's do the thing.
Oh, here we go. It's the Extra Dimensional Social Media Depository. Here's a diamond, Phil. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll let you have the diamond.
A chocolate diamond.
A chocolate diamond.
I love chocolate diamonds. They're flawed as hell, but let's call them a thing so we can sell them to people.
Absolutely. Chocolate diamonds. Let's sell them to people. I'm down with that. So first things first, let's talk about the weight loss challenge update for 11/21. It's almost Thanksgiving. Have we given ourselves enough room for the feast day? Are we closing in on our goals? Let's find out. So Jared Rasher, last week 232, this week 229, goal 220, 9 more pounds. He's bracing for Thanksgiving. And those walks are starting to get a little bracing also, since it's freezing outside if you live in the north.
Hey, it's damn cold.
Bob, man, where you at?
I am down a pound again this week. Woohoo! Down to 192.4. Woot woot.
That is good. That's very good.
Plus, I plan on being good.
Hobbs, Jason Hobbs.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's up?
It's Thanksgiving, and Bob's favorite pie in the entire world is in season right now. I don't know how Bob is going to be good because pumpkin pie abounds right now, and I'm having trouble believing Bob's going to be like, of course, Mom, please, just a small sliver of that pumpkin pie, as opposed to the third to quarter piece that Bob's going to put all of his whipped cream on
top of.
Believe it or not, my willpower has increased this past year.
No way.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, in general, but not pumpkin pie.
It's going to be rough.
It is.
Because I'm having Thanksgiving, and then I'm having Friendsgiving the day after, and Bob will probably be at both of those.
I will.
I will tell you this. I'm doing Thanksgiving, of course, because I'm going to do my Alton Brown turkey recipe, the infallible turkey.
Infallible. I'm going to brine a turkey for the first time
I always
ever.
brine.
I've never brined a turkey
absolutely.
before. I've actually never cooked a turkey before by myself.
Would you like my recipe?
Sure.
It's the Alton Brown recipe. You're going to need. I'll give you my other digital thermometer.
Nice.
Because you're going to need a digital thermometer for this. But I promise you that if you follow this recipe, this will be the best turkey you've ever had in your life.
Bob, you want to come hang out with me and mess up a turkey on Friday?
Absolutely.
I will. I also will tell you this: that turkey will cook faster than you think.
Okay.
The recipe will show you that, because you're going to cook to temperature. But there's a very specific way to do it. It's very scientific, and I love it. I've done it for I think 5 or 7 years so far. Never failed me.
This has been the Phil Vecchione How to Cook a Turkey segment.
I am going to be. I told my mother we're making extra stuffing, because the day after, stuffing waffles.
Stuffing waffles.
Leftover turkey and stuff on top.
All right. Jason Hobbs, who ran the BX game for me, and I'm going to play again next week, and for a couple of weeks, I hope. because I want to play some BX to see how it plays. Because actually, old school D&D is a lot of fun. I didn't expect it to be, and it's tons of fun for me.
The most D&D that I've ever played was BX.
Oh, I played BX like that was my whole childhood.
I mean, it's way better than AD&D for me, man.
It's a lot less complicated than AD&D.
And I love the way the turns work, like as a unit of time. Like when Gygax talks about all campaigns should be measured with time, I'm like, well, this is actually a good mechanic for how this all works for exploration. Like, why isn't this mechanic like an optional mechanic for 5th edition D&D?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why it isn't. I'm just saying, like, it should be. All right. Hobbs, last week he was 210. This week he's 209. He's trying to get to 195. He didn't drink enough to lose more, apparently, because he lost a bunch of weight when he drank a lot at Gamehole Con. Randy Farmer, he's up 2 pounds. He's 6.5 from goal. Ugh. His primary exercise is walking, and the rains have returned. He either needs to change his method or get a little wet. So I don't know, man. Like, that's tough. It's cold. It's winter, right? Like, it's fallish, winterish out there these days.
I told everybody before: supermarket, mall.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's tough.
Yep. Mall walking it.
Let's see who else. Sean Nicholson, holding steady at 184.5. He's hardly budged this whole challenge, but it's better than gaining weight. Troy Taylor, 237, down a pound, headed to Turkey Day. After 3 weeks stuck on a number, I'll take it.
Whoa, Chris had
Bless
a
you.
sneeze.
Sorry, everybody. I apologize. PK Sullivan, damn it, 238 again. PK's been having a rough go of it lately, so
He's still
You got
looking-
this, PK.
He's still looking sharp as hell.
he looks
though.
sharp as hell. Absolutely, he's been running like a madman. So yeah, that's our weight loss challenge update. I still don't have a scale in my house, so
Yeah, I didn't.
it's hard for me to weigh myself. I don't own a scale. I'm sorry, everybody. I really don't want to know how much I weigh right now. Actually, it's probably not
I got a
good.
scale upstairs, but we don't have to go look.
All right,
I'm not looking either. I just came off of. I actually forgot this morning, but I was at a gaming conference, a gaming convention, and a work conference
consecutively.
Although I will say this, I don't think I ate that much at a catacon.
No,
I mean, except like dinner. Like that one dinner was ridiculous.
oh yeah, that's right. When you ate pasta, the crazy.
I didn't
amounts
eat the pasta.
Oh, you ate everything
I
but
ate,
the pasta.
I ate that double decker chicken parmesan thing. Eric had it too, but he was smart. He didn't finish it. Like,
Next thing, like I mentioned earlier, it's Senda's birthday, and a bunch of people gave Senda well wishes.
yeah.
So happy birthday once again, Senda.
Yeah.
And also Chris Shore, Ben Wilson, Todd Zurcher, Fraser Simmons. It's actually Simons.
Simons.
V. Waxberg, they all said happy birthday, as did a lot of the rest of us in other places on social media. So once again, happy birthday, Senda. Queen of the chat room for life. Victor Wyatt. This is sort of in conjunction with Pandas Talking Games. So on the last episode, you folks talked about finding the right game for yourselves, right, Phil?
Yes.
And Victor, he posted a couple of games that will work for that as one-shots for a table. Hell for Leather from Box Ninja on RPG Now. And it's inspired by Tales of Revenge as diverse as Hamlet, Kill Bill, The Crow, and Ghost Rider. It's a role-playing game of vengeance. And then Hell for Leather, which FOR instead of the number 4. So Hell for the number 4 leather uses tarot cards, and Hell for FOR leather uses a dice stacking and flicking mechanic, which makes me want to play that game instantly because I can stack dice and flick dice.
Yeah.
That sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. They both look good. I don't think they're terribly expensive either.
No, I don't think so either.
Do you know what game so I read it. I think I talked about it on a previous show. Was the Black Hack?
Yeah, you talked about that. It's an old school.
Yeah,
Renaissance
it's
game.
an old school. Yeah, it's an OSR, but it's got some modern design stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just started reading the Cthulhu Hack, which is based off the Black Hack, but it's a super light Call of Cthulhu.
I'm in. If you can take away the giant skill list from BRP or even Trail, I'll play.
I'll finish reading it. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna like
I'll
it.
play it. I'll run it. I'll do anything with
right,
it.
because I think it's gonna hit a spot that's like lighter than Call and Trail, and better put together than Tremulous.
Nice. Next thing, Lonnie Spangler. He asked, "Does anyone have any pointers for a GM running Lasers and Feelings for the first time?" And a bunch of us jumped in. Phil, what about you, man?
I summoned Senda, but I think off the top of my head, I think my advice was first of all, lean into those Star Trek tropes really hard.
Not Star Trek Beyond tropes.
You want to go again?
You want to be wrong again?
You're not even close to being right.
I am, but that's okay.
You're not. not even like
Your old grog.
The light from the star of you being right.
The-
it can't even reach.
The old Grognardian in you is rearing so hard right now.
Yes,
it's unbelievable.
It is.
You are
I
so
take my
in
Trek
the
seriously.
you are so in the it's my way or the highway, which is not what this show's about at all.
I know, except for Trek, where
Except
I get,
for
like,
where
really,
you're wrong in this case.
Yeah.
Way to not be opening or accepting of people.
Yep. Correct. It's fine. You can totally jump. You can totally jump motorcycles in your Star Trek, just not mine.
No, that's fine.
I'm gonna check with some other people. But anyway, what was I gonna say? So leaning hard into some of those Trek tropes. This game is not a 4-hour game.
No,
like
it's not.
let it go crazy and finish it off in 2 hours. And when you don't know what's going on in this game, just ask for a dice roll, because whether it succeeds or fails, the game will go forward.
That's true.
I mean, when we played in Mexico, we started that game off. I didn't have a frigging clue what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys were like gonna stabilize the planet atmosphere.
Then we all devolved.
And I was like, make a roll, and you catastrophically failed. And I was like,
Then we all devolved.
well, that a couple more rolls led to that. But like, I'm like, oh, the atmosphere is coming off the planet. Like,
Yeah,
now
that
we know what
happened
this
too.
game's about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other things that were said. Senda said, drive the story, make it 2 hours. Red shirts is good inspiration, as you mentioned red shirts.
Oh, red. So here's my specific tip for red shirts. You've read red shirts, right?
Oh, yeah.
Have you read it?
I have not. I have
Oh
to-
my God, you should.
Yeah.
You got to read this
I
while
do.
you're on the
Excellent-
night shift.
Excellent book.
The trick to the thing I pull out of red shirts is, all the other crew members should be terrified of the bridge crew. Like,
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely.
That's the thing. Like the other backup ensigns are terrified of your characters, because your characters are batshit crazy.
That's right.
So, no one wants to talk to you. No one wants to tell you stuff. And they sure as hell don't want to go on an away mission.
No
with you.
way. They want to.
No.
They're like drawing straws to see who's going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Bob, you have to read this book.
Yes, I do.
It's
I'm
really
behind.
good. Scalzi, right?
Yeah.
Scalzi, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's so good.
So the next thing, Wayne, he posted a if you win at next game days at your place, it's a multi-touch coffee table giveaway.
Oh my God, yes.
And I entered. It's just your email address. So if you
Yeah,
have like
I entered it as well.
a scrub email address, feel free to use that, or use your actual email address. And it looks really cool. Like it's actually a multi-touch coffee table. I kind of want one really badly.
Right. Well, who
Who
wouldn't?
wouldn't want one, right?
Exactly.
Last thing for at least the community chatter part of this is, oh no, not the last thing for the community chatter. This is the Gnome Stew and Kickstarter spotlight at the same time. So Darcy Ross got to talk with Avery Elder about Monster Hearts 2, and what a great interview it is. Like,
Yeah.
Fantastic interview. Amazing game. Great Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
There's like win.
Yep. The conversation is fantastic. I would suggest going and taking a look and reading it over on the Stew, and also going and checking out the Monster Hearts 2 Kickstarter,
I'm
which
already backing.
you backed.
I
Yep.
backed. I didn't even flinch. I backed the second. I believe I backed within like the first like 10 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yes,
you know what
you
I
did.
did back at the last minute?
I saw you Perseverant or Perseverant.
Yes.
Perseverant.
Yeah.
Yes, that disaster game.
Yeah, I can't wait to play it
Yeah.
because we know what's going on there. So when one of us kills the other one, it'll be fine.
Well, that's fine then. Yeah, I'm good like that.
because we know what's going to happen. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
cool.
it's just like Fiasco. You can screw me over in Fiasco; it won't trigger me. That game, because that's part of the.
That's what the
that's
game's
the
about,
ante.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Patreon shoutouts. So Ben Wilson,
Thank you, Ben.
our international correspondent. Eric Simon from Four in Hand Games, the one who rocks out with Rockalypse.
Is the next one? Is it Sean D. Kelly?
Yes, it's Sean D. Kelly,
Sean D. Kelly,
who
like
is
D20.
complex math in the Slack room for life.
Indeed.
Which, the D doesn't sound at all like a P when you say it. So, yeah, that's...
Well, that's why I say D20.
Yeah,
Yeah,
D20
Right?
Kelly.
Because not P20.
Yep.
D20.
the
The
P20
ever well-dressed Jim McClure.
who is inciting panic of the satanic variety all over the place.
I'm sad. I don't think there's a picture of Jim and I wearing literally the same
the
outfit.
same
at a,
outfit at a catacon.
black polo, jeans, like, and almost Jim flinched. Let me just tell you that Jim almost hugged me.
He almost
He was
did.
like arms
I
out,
saw
and then
it.
he was like, "Oh, I only give one hug a year."
I was there.
Yeah.
I was there for it.
Yeah, he wanted to hug. I was ready. I was like, "You can hug me. It's okay." But he's got a thing, and
Yeah, he's got a thing. We
He'll
respect
come
the
around.
thing.
I got a Gen Con hug.
Yes, you did.
But he flinched like he was gonna hug me. I saw it.
And of course, the last but never least, the old school DM Randy Farmer. By the way, Randy had another papercraft thing that he posted around. He actually took video of it and zoomed in around on this city, the city block with like an outdoor festival going on, and even had music going on in the background.
It's crazy.
Just go look at it. Go join the community. Which, by the way, thank you everybody. We have hit over 300 members at this point.
Yeah, it was 301 last I saw it.
Yeah. Now I have no idea if that's a real 300 because of course there could be bots or things like that.
Could be Russian dating bots for all we know. But welcome Russian dating bots to the Mr. Mark Network.
All right. Let me. So the next thing that we're going to do is this. The Super Friends of Podcasting. So first, let's start with our shows.
Sure.
So over on Advantaged Insight, Wayne gave a solo update on what's coming up for Advantaged Insight and a few other little tidbits. I know that very soon there's at least the first part of a 3-part series on Sharn with Christian Sexy Voice Serrano is coming out because I edited it. So
cool.
That's a thing that's about to happen. And the first episode is really good. I like the conversation that they have about Sharn and how to like it. I love Sharn, right? City of Towers. Oh,
are you telling me?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, preaching to the choir at this table.
Yeah, right. Man, there's a Sharn campaign game that I have just like laying around that would play for like 12 sessions.
Oh,
I mean, we could play
I have one as well.
We have to put that in then somewhere in the.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a Sharn one as well. I just run in Dungeon World, but whatever.
I would just play it with 5th edition D&D. It would work just fine.
Oh, 5th would be fine. Yeah.
Threats from Gallifrey, Garrett and Tim Hannon. They were talking about their extra life experiences and things like that.
Very nice.
Yeah. Pandas Talking Games. You had. This was from last week.
I think this is last week.
Yeah, because this week was Finding Mr. Right.
Finding Mr. Right.
That's right.
Who titled that episode?
Not me.
It wasn't me.
Oh, it was Senda then.
I guess so.
Because I don't post those.
Yeah, we were talking about finding the right game for you, and kind of talking about about what you're using the game for, and a combination of complexity and rules and setting and stuff like that. And then kind of talked about some of the games that that are kind of right for us.
I feel like it should be Finding Mr. or Mrs. Right.
You would think, right?
Yeah.
But
mark your bingo boards,
no,
everybody.
it doesn't have to be. I mean, I could find Mr. Right.
I know, but that's what I mean.
Oh
right?
yeah, I mean, it could also be Mrs. Right.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Because it could be,
Yep, Senda did it.
On Down with D&D, me and Sean, the Mad Wizard Merwin, we had a conversation with Sly Flourish himself, Mike Shea.
Yeah.
It was really enjoyable. I hope to have Mike on the show again sometime. It was a lot of fun to talk to him. And then I was chatting with Darcy at a Catacon. It looks like Cypher Speak is going to go probably to a monthly rotation.
That's all right.
So they'll be coming out once a month.
I'm gonna start working this week on another monthly show.
Yeah.
It's on my to-do list to start pinging Rob.
Last week we had another episode of the Gnomecast, and I just recorded episode 3, and I'm going to record episode 4 this week too. So next week we'll have episode 3 of the Gnomecast, which will have Ange and John on it. Which, by the way, John Arcadian, whenever you say Sharn, he always finishes it off with City of Towers. It's like he can't do it without saying City of Towers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny.
And since I'm sitting here talking to you, apparently I didn't get thrown in the stew pot because that show is deadly.
Yeah, well,
for gnomes.
It should, at the end of every episode, somebody should be tossed in.
No, because we don't want to die. We're trying to avoid being thrown in the stew pot.
No, I just think it'd be fun. Like whoever, like you draw straws at the end, and one of you gets thrown in.
But then we die.
Well, you come back. I mean, it's not like we don't have magic.
That's true.
We resurrect.
Man, that's weird. You're gonna eat me.
Listen,
then resurrect me.
You die to strengthen the rest of the gnomes, and then we bring you back.
You're gonna kill me to resurrect me after you eat me.
Yeah.
That's weird.
There's no rules that say you
realize
can't.
what that implies.
It doesn't say you can't do it.
You realize what that implies?
What?
That you had to poop me out.
Whatever.
It's weird.
It's not
just throwing it out there. It's awkward. There's nothing not awkward about that.
Remember that episode of the X-Files where the guy would eat people?
Oh yeah, remember that?
And then barf them up?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Is that the Sin Eater?
So
yeah.
Did you listen to last week's?
No. I was at a work convention. I didn't get to listen to anything.
Okay. Me and Bob actually talked about Gaming and BS episode 114 last week.
Okay.
I haven't listened to 115 yet because it's next week.
Okay. Well, we love those guys anyway.
We do love those guys.
What is the? Does anyone know the topic for 115?
It's gods and RPGs.
Oh well. All right. Sure.
What?
I mean, I led my players on a tear through the Deities and Demigods book as a kid. Like, sure, I did that too.
Well, we'll talk about it next week. So
sure.
It was gods and RPGs this week on Gaming and BS.
I got to try to find some time. I'm going to my parents' house. I'm driving with the kids for 6 hours to and from. This is not easy podcasting time for me.
No, not at all. I'm also like a bad podcast listener because I didn't actually listen to the most recent episode of She's a Super Geek, the second episode of Bated Breath, where apparently John Arcadian becomes an evil bad guy.
It happens.
Yeah.
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 I be honest. I haven't touched a podcast in like a week and a half. Like it's kind of a problem.
Well, there wasn't a new Talking Tabletop as far as I could tell, but there was Satanic Panic episode 4.
Oh, nice.
I did listen to that because I've been listening to a lot of actual plays lately. So Satanic Panic episode 4 was really fun. There's a lot of sleeping in vans, and there's of course breaking and entering because that's what you do in that game apparently.
Yes.
Just when people are home actually and lying to teenagers and killing kids, that happens too in those games.
Whatever. You gotta break a few eggs, man.
You got to break a few eggs because you got to stop those evil tabletoppers.
Make an omelet, man.
Yeah.
Break a few eggs.
Another thing that I listen to. This just started. It's called the Orpheus. Oh man.
Oh, it just was this Rob Sith's?
Yeah, Rob Sith's podcast.
Yeah.
The Orpheus Protocol, I think, is what the name of the show is, and the game that he's making.
Yes.
This is a really well produced podcast. It's got sound effects. It's got voice acting in it. They actually do the mechanical stuff in the game too, so you learn the game as you're listening to it. So it's got everything that people tend to talk about.
It was very cool to actually see Rob Sith at Catacon.
Yeah, it was. I talked with him a bunch actually. I played Satanic Panic with him. I talked to him at the bar on Thursday night, Friday night, one of those nights. It was a lot of fun. The other thing that I listened to is the Comic Strip AP has started.
Oh yeah.
Through the Gauntlet.
God,
and I listened to Sorcerer, which was, I mean, those are easy listens, man. They're 10 to 15 minutes.
Is it the actual game Sorcerer?
Yeah, they're playing Sorcerer.
Oh, kick-ass.
Yeah. And then I listened to the first episode of Young at Heart with Fraser Simons, and I forget who he's playing with.
Nice.
That's Fraser's new game, his Powered by the Apocalypse game. That's like a baseball role-playing game about.
Oh yeah.
A storytelling game about an aging baseball player on like his last days, like he's out there, like that movie that I love
For
to
the love
watch
of the
with
game.
Kevin Costner.
For the love of
For
the
the
game.
love of the game.
Yep, it's based on the book more than the movie.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That's mostly what I listened to this past week. I listened to episode 79 of the Gauntlet. They talked about Firefighters, Worlds in Peril, and Passion de Passiones, which is the telenovela. Role-playing it was Powered by the Apocalypse, but according to Jason, that the designer might change it to something not Powered by the Apocalypse because it didn't need a lot of that stuff.
Telenovela
it's so funny, right? Like, it's so good.
It's good, and I mean, to be honest, I mean, there's a little bit of that when we ran Cartel.
Yeah, there's a little bit.
Well, we had Tony, so there was a lot of it.
Yeah.
But it was totally worth it because it was just fantastic.
All right. So, is there anything else in the chat room for left? Because that's all I have to talk about.
I was going to bring up the Young at Heart.
Yeah.
Avi wanted to give a shout out to that, but we
Yeah,
hit it.
we just hit it, yeah.
So we're good. We can.
Jim was talking about how dapperly dressed.
Oh yeah.
That we are, but that's I'll be honest. Like, it's a Steve Jobs thing, right? Like, I can't stand thinking about having to pick out clothes, so I've reduced most of my wardrobe. Like, my con wardrobe is literally just in the wintertime, jeans and encoded polos, and in the summertime it's encoded polos and shorts.
Yeah,
like there's no thought that goes into my outfits.
It's just
like,
that.
It's literally like, if you've seen me once at a con, well, you've seen me at every con.
You've seen me at every con.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will say thank everybody. Thank you so
Good
much,
job,
everyone.
Senda.
Misdirected Mark, word scramble.
Screwing up the ending.
Thanks, everybody, so much for listening. We appreciate it.
If you are free Tuesday evenings, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 6:45 p.m. the Queen's time, you're welcome. Come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with the other listeners in our awesome chat room for life.
Amazing.
And even ask us questions from time to time.
Yeah.
If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts, and take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Threats from Gallifrey, Advantage to Insight, Pandas Talking Games, and Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy. You can and should also check out some of our brother and sister podcasts. She's a Super Geek, Talking Tabletop, The Shrieker, Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
You can then leave us feedback and give us your opinions on where you fall with the Star Trek movie series. You can reach us directly by email, chris@misdirectedmark.com, if you want sympathy for how they're good. Phil at misdirectedmark.com if you are old school Grognar and want to whine and complain about it. Bob at misdirectedmark.com if you want somewhere in the middle, like some sort of middle ground, not quite embracing it, but not quite hating it.
Okay, hold on one second. I didn't say they were good. I said the last one was closer to the rest of them. Closer than the rest of them.
Well, if you're going to say like that, it's kind of true.
It's actually true.
Okay, but if by close they're still far.
No,
yes.
by close it's actually in the wheelhouse.
You can also reach us at our Facebook group. You can hit us up on Twitter at MisdirectedMark. at DNA Phil, at Robert M. Everson, and at The Light 101, still cranking out your postmodern jukebox jams all day long.
Especially in the Slack Room for Life is where I'd like to put them these days.
Very good. And then, of course, please travel to the center of our universe, the Coruscant of our social media community, our ever-growing G+ community, and hang out with our Russian date bots.
300 members and growing.
At least 100 of you are actual humans. The other 200 of you are possibly Russian date bots.
Oh, man. If you like what we do here and on other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMP. Patrons get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, and the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, plus any other special releases that we might throw out there.
Including possibly showing off a little Matt Morrow artwork.
That's right. Week. That's very true.
Yeah.
I guess with that, I will say this has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Phil is getting ready with the rope-a-dope to do the mic drop.
We out!